It is. It's Thursday afternoon, East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around. Time for the Friday football warm-up. Michigan State football. UCLA Bruins coming to town this weekend, homecoming weekend. A lot of consternation, a lot of anxiety among Michigan State fans. We'll be fielding questions. We got about 25 questions, mailbag style. We will be getting into today. SpartanMag Live. Might get a call from Big Movie. Not sure. Invitation is out to him. I spoke with him earlier this week. Might be able to do that. We will keep those lines open. We are recording this. This is not live. In the future, we will be bringing back some SpartanMag Lives, planning to, and we're excited about that. Hold on, I'm getting some texts right now. I'll get into that a little bit later. Anyway, hey, if you've been here before, if you've done it before, give us a like in this channel. We really appreciate that. Subscribe to the SpartanMag YouTube channel. We really appreciate that as well. Go to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. We value all of our maggers, our longtime maggers, SpartanMag subscribers. Big time appreciation for those people that have been supporting SpartanMag.com since the beginning of the internet, and going back to the people that subscribed to Spartan Magazine back in the print edition era, going all the way back to when I arrived on the shores of Spartan Mag, a zine, 1993, when Jim Miller was quarterback. Those of you that have been with us that long, and you know who you are, we appreciate you as well. If you're not a Spartan Mag subscriber, if you're not a Magger, become one. $1, try it for a week. You will love it. Right now, conversation hot and heavy with Michigan State with their situation coming off the loss at Nebraska. Michigan State's 3-2 now. They lose 38-27 at Nebraska. We got coverage of that, SpartanMag.com coverage. Reaction, analysis, opinions, SpartanMag.com. Underground Bunker message board is the place to be for all of that. And over at the Underground Bunker message board, we invited Spartan Maggers to post questions about Michigan State football. We are entertaining those questions here today, starting with question number 1 from John Dons from Columbus, Ohio. Excuse me, I should use the cough button on that. From Columbus, he says, are major donors ready to pay the buyout? Are major donors ready to pay the buyout? That was the first question that was posted. Woo! No. Major donors, no. Question 2, Blue Collar from Plymouth, Michigan says, what have you seen that makes you think Jonathan Smith can succeed here? Recruiting, development, personality, buy-in from donors, program fundamentals, anything? Question mark. You ask about recruiting. They had a decommitment this week from a 4-star, and that was a Southern 4-star wide receiver guy. And with Michigan State was certainly happy to take that commitment. But sometimes in the recruiting game, I don't know if this is the case with him, but sometimes you might see people that are advised to go ahead and commit somewhere to get all the other offers going. That's going to happen sometimes in some recruitments. Michigan State recruiting, if you're looking for Michigan State to have a top 15 recruiting class, that's not going to happen anytime soon. It's only happened maybe once or twice in the last 30 years. And Michigan State's won some games without that in the past. Top 20 recruiting class, of course, would be nice. You're not going to get that unless you win pretty big, or you're coming in with a whole lot of I don't know if juice is the right word, enthusiasm, buzz, carnival barking. Like Mel Tucker had in year number 2, had a persona going, had a recruiting class. I think it was inside the top 25. Top 20 not going to happen in year 2 of a rebuild unless, in the old days, if you went out and bought a bunch of players, which Michigan State didn't do, in a large scale fashion, the way some programs might have done in the past. So recruiting, and part of recruiting is, of course, recruiting high school players and evaluating them and winning in the living rooms, and a combination of that and doing a successful job in the portal with NIL, keeping your players and going out and getting transfers. Part of doing well in the transfer portal is evaluation, going out and finding an Omari Kelly to come in and do some good things. Now you need a few of those at a few different positions. Michigan State spent some money on Connor Moore. He's done pretty well at right tackle. Left tackle last week had some struggles here and there, but they were aggressive with him. You need to see some more aggression like that. You need the NIL money to do it, and I think there is some there. And with the $20.5 million, Michigan State's going to be strong there. Will they be like really, really super heavyweight strong, competing with some of the programs that are getting the $20.5 million cap plus NIL from collectives? No, there's going to be some that are outspending them right now. But recruiting, the portal's going to be part of it. Evaluation, playing some money ball, spend some money here, smart money here, evaluation, that's going to be a big deal. But it's not like the old days where you definitely need, 5 straight top 20 recruiting classes to have a top 5 program. Not that D'Antonio did that, but there was some of the stars matter thinking that some people espouse to in terms of trying to win a national championship. Michigan State needs to walk and jog and run before they can sprint. Sprint is a national championship, and Michigan State, I don't think that's been an expectation since 1966. In 2013, Michigan State might have been capable of beating anybody in the country, but that kind of snuck up on everyone, and it was not an expectation. It just kind of happened. If you're hiring and firing coaches at Michigan State based on winning a national championship, you'll be firing coaches for the next 100 years, and you'll end up nowhere. It needs to almost sneak up on you the way it did with D'Antonio and the way it almost happened at Virginia Tech. Clemson kind of came out of nowhere to become a national champion with heavyweight recruiting. Some people cite Clemson as an outlier because they didn't have the number 1 recruiting class every year, but they had like 2 or 3 top 10 classes, and that preceded their rise. Anyway, it's not like those days when everything was recruiting and you held on to players long term. Now you're losing players to transfer portal. Everyone is. So the recruiting rankings as they are, it'll be interesting to see the correlation between top 25 classes and top 25 programs. There's going to be some that weigh it more heavily toward the portal, more that weigh it more heavily toward the high schools. There's going to be some that do a little bit of both. The super heavyweights will be strong, and they lose third stringers because they're good third stringers and they want to play, and they just don't have playing time for them. And they'll just pick and choose here and there in the portal like Ohio State does. Michigan State does not have the power of Ohio State. Newsflash. Michigan State does not have the power of USC. So recruiting, I thought this recruiting cycle was looking favorable. It still might. If Michigan State continues to lose, they might lose more players, and that won't be a good sign. From there, they better have some strong plan Bs and plan Cs on the back burner to go and backfill those. And every year that the evaluation in the portal is going to be strong. It needs to be strong. Evaluating how they're doing an evaluation is very difficult. So I can't stand here and say that recruiting is terrible or great. Illinois has made a nice rise. Has their recruiting been terrible or great? Indiana's made a great rise. Has their recruiting been terrible or great? They did a great job with some transfers. They went out and got Mendoza. That was a big timer. So, to just look at recruiting rankings and say they're outside of the top 40, as I like to say, top 45 you need to be in. Sound the alarms. There's a problem. Well, recruiting's part of it. Portal's part of it. Evaluation, both, is part of it. So recruiting, I'm not going to say it's great. I'm not going to say it's a problem. Now, development, you mentioned. At Oregon State, they did a great job with that. Player development, still keeping an eye on that. There's 17 games in. I think you're seeing Alessio Milivojevic show some development. You're seeing Aiden Childs show some development. You're seeing Michael Masunas with some development. Stanton Ramil, you were hoping to see that, but his situation has been interrupted. Christian Phillips at right guard, I think he's developing. I think Luka Vincic is going to be really good in the future. That was an evaluation, a recruitment, a transfer. Injured this year, but I think he's going to be good in the future. Gavin Brocious has been okay. I thought, there was a drive. Was it the USC game I talked about last week where it was the best we've ever seen Gavin Brocious play? So individually, you're seeing some bright points there, but the offensive line collectively, of course, is not doing well enough. And it's one player here, one player there. We might get into that in a moment. D-line, Van Sumeren's developing well. I'm just going through the 22. I don't get to see what's going on a lot with the third string right now. We didn't see a spring game, so it's kind of hard to make a call on some of those things. I'll just call the depth chart here. The only way to answer a question about development is to get into the weeds and look at everybody. Jack Velling, he kind of hit his ceiling as a sophomore, it looks like, at Oregon State. He's got good hands, made a couple nice catches against Nebraska, but in terms of being an all-around tight end, the blocking is better than it was, but it's not great. And he's a player, but not a difference maker. He is what he is. I don't blame him. Evan Boyd, saw him get on the field. That's an interesting transfer. Redshirt sophomore. Hitch, broke a tackle, 11-yard gain last week. That was encouraging for a young guy. Rustin Young looks like he's developing. Last year played in the first game. He played against Ohio State, emergency role. Was not ready to play. Did not look good. Not his fault. This year, redshirt freshman had to play emergency minutes against USC. Looked functional. Only played 6 snaps against Nebraska for some reason. Looked functional. So I think Rustin Young is coming along. Rakeem Johnson, haven't seen much of him. That's curious. We'll get to that later. Ashton Lepo has been battling injuries. He kind of is what he is. They inherited him. In the transfer portal, Isaac Smith, Cam Williams, David Santiago, Anelu Lafayette. Each of those guys, it's by committee. None of them is a difference maker. Maybe Lafayette could become a difference maker in the future. Santiago here and there flashes. Quindarius Dunnigan, transfer portal. Last year carried a little bit too much weight. This year he's been functional. Jalen Thompson had some good moments against Nebraska. Need more. Kai Burnett's been on the field a little bit. Ben Roberts developing. Grady Kelly is a transfer. Been functional. Been starting. I hear he's also a positive character in the locker room. That's no small thing. Derek Simmons seems to have a good future. Might redshirt. You hear good things still about Mike Schonbeeler. So these are guys beneath the surface. You know, the defensive tackle situation, they've got depth there. It's been Ben Roberts, Van Sumeren, Grady Kelly, those 3. Buckley's playing a little bit. He's not been great. He's just a guy. No disrespect. Simmons has a nice future. Jalen Satchel, I can't remember how many plays he played last week, and he's been injured. Beeler, they still feel good about him, not in the playing group yet. So Beeler, Derek Simmons, guys for the future. Roberts, a guy for the future. Defensive tackle's not a problem for Michigan State. Van Sumeren becoming borderline plus player too. Middle linebacker Jordan Hall, they didn't start him last year. Told him what he needed to work on. He stuck around. He's a better player now. And like Joe Rossi said in interviews yesterday, Rossi believes that Hall could become one of the best players he's ever coached. So he's on an uptick. Wayne Matthews, transfer. He's just kind of a guy. Made a nice play on 3rd down last week. But he's had some struggles in my head. I wouldn't say struggles, but he's got a ceiling. He's limited. Maybe he can prove me wrong and become more dynamic here in the latter part of his last season, but he just kind of is what he is. Pretzlaff, we'll see what he is in the future. Ade Willie, I thought the first few games, he didn't play against Nebraska out with an injury, but he's been a solid functional nickel. In terms of development, a guy that had really struggled at corner last year, struggled to get on the field in the past. So someone that they found a position for and they've gotten functional play out of him. Now, some of these guys are like functional players. You can become a 6-6, 7-5 team with some of these guys if you've got all your crap together and you're not burning timeouts and having bad penalties, struggling with punt coverage, struggling with punt protection, having to punt twice because of a flag. If you're doing those things, then these guys are not going to be able to carry you. They're not good enough to overcome that kind of stuff. Player development, Malcolm Bell, look, he's been pretty good this year, better than I thought he was watching his film last year at UConn. That's pretty good evaluation. Chance Rucker, he's been in and out. Have to wait and see on him. Josh Eaton, interesting evaluation. They spoke highly of him in the spring. You don't see him get targeted a lot, so it's not like he's a weakness. But about once per game, there's a mistake there. The out and up on the 3rd and 10, which was the turning point play in the game in Nebraska. There was the 4th down conversion when he sank too deep on against USC on a 4th down situation when Michigan State had momentum. Both of those were really the turning points of the game. And he's a good player, pretty good player, solid. But those 2 plays right there, just kind of thin ice plays you can't have. You have to erase those. Looks like Mubi might be calling here in about 30 minutes. Just heard from him. Across the board, Nikai Martinez, good evaluation, good player last year, has been hurt all year. Omarion Smith, they continue to develop with him. There's a call from someone not associated with the show. All right. Continue to look players. This is what I do. I'll start to answer a question in short form, And the way my brain works, I just kind of dive deeper and deeper and deeper into it, and it drives some people crazy, but that's what we've done at Spartan Magazine for 35 years. That's how we do it. Amarion Smith, they developed him. He's been a functional player this year. They've needed him with Martinez being out. Last year I thought Amarion Smith, with all the things that he was faced with, I wasn't sure that he would become a functional player again. With the family matters that he's had to tend to. Great respect for him on that. But he has come back this year and been a good, solid, functional player. Is he a plus player? I would say no. I think he's a decent second stringer, but he's had to start a lot this year. And then last week he started at nickel. So his functionality, his versatility has allowed Michigan State to not completely fall off the cliff on some of these things. Let's see, corner, those are the safeties. So it went through a lot of the starters, first and second stringers. So in terms of player development, I'm not seeing, red flags as to guys, to a large group of players not developing. In terms of overall units, offensive line has to develop, no question about that, better than it's showing. Defense showed some promise last week. We'll get into that more in a moment. Let's see. This is a big question from Blue Collar from Plymouth. A lot of different levels to this. Buy-in from donors. I'm not sure where that stands. I'm not sure, donors. I'm not sure there's like major domineering helicopter donors in place right now. There's some with deep pockets, but there's no, there's not, fist on a podium people demanding more right now at the donor level that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's some people, some heavy donors that are bothered, but I've not been hearing much about that. Program fundamentals, not seeing them yet. But when he was hired, yes, overall program fundamentals, they were the ticket here. That's what's supposed to be Jonathan Smith's strength and his staff. Those seeds are still being planted and being nurtured and cultivated, so we'll have to see. A lot of flat tires and loose screws right now that need to be fixed. There's no question about that. They know that. We'll see what it looks like this weekend. Tino from Long Beach says, have you heard about any pissed off donors who have had enough with Jonathan Smith? First of all, that language is a little stronger than I prefer. Any ticked off donors? Have I heard about any ticked off donors? My answer is no, I've not heard about that. I'm sure there are, some, but like I said, that I'm not sure there's any loudmouth bull and China shop donors right now. They're making waves. Question 4 from Real Pasadena, guy from Pasadena, California. He says, at offensive tackle, Rustin Young and Connor Moore seems to be a much better combination than Moore and Lepo. He asks, who is making this call? Coach Michalczyk? What is the rationale? Good questions. I kind of looked into that a little bit this week, and I agree that when they, against USC, who had NFL caliber pass rushers, Rustin Young sometimes was a little bit out of sorts, but he was functional, survived over there. Frankly, he was better against USC than Lepo was against Nebraska. Everybody saw that. Rustin Young came in, played about 6 snaps against Nebraska, did all right. I think Connor Moore is better at right tackle than he is at left tackle. So throw all that together, and I'd agree with you. I think Moore and Young have been better on game day from what we've seen in the last 8 quarters. Does it look different in practice? I don't know. It must. You're asking who makes this call. Jonathan Smith and Lindgren have talked about it a little bit this week, and they haven't really come out and said it this way, but they pretty much delegate to Michalczyk, the offensive line coach. They let him. That's his baby, and he handles it. And it's not coming to fruition yet. It needs to soon, and those things do take time. Maybe it's taking more time than Michigan State fans would like. I didn't watch Oregon State for 5 years to know how long it took Michalczyk to put together a really good offensive line in year 4 and year 5. I know they were 2-10 in the first year, 5-7 in the second year. The third year was COVID, and then the fourth year they really started to get that ground game going and started pounding people. So it took, I don't know what happened. COVID year is kind of a throwaway a little bit. I've not watched their games from the second year to know what it looked like back then. I probably should go back and take a look at it. College football was different back then. It's changed a lot in a short period of time. But your answer is, who makes this call? The answer is Mahalchik. He makes the call. Question 5, MSU DeBest has a question from Parts Unknown. He says, it would be great if you could have Big Mooby on. He is totally out on the staff. I'm not sure that's entirely true. I spoke with him this week. He's tired of having substandard football. I don't want to speak for him entirely, but he's leaving the door open for sure. MSU DeBest goes on. He says, whereas you and Paul were more optimistic still. I'm not sure we're optimistic. I just don't think we're as knee-jerk as some are, and there's nothing wrong with being knee-jerk. I'm less likely to get knee-jerk 1 1/4 seasons into something. I mean, partly because of past experiences. 2 of the best seasons in Michigan State history were year 5 with Perlis and year 5 with Saban. And prior to that, there were some positive signs. There was some progress, but a lot of 500 seasons. Now, as they were building, there was more of a sense, there was a strong sense that different personality types, that Perlis and Saban were on it. When something was going wrong, they were on it. That's the case, I think, at Michigan State also. It's just not as public. Doesn't come across on the sidelines or in the press conferences. Now, Smith has been a little more fervent in the press conferences. And I think his radio show, I think he explains a lot of things really well on his radio show. And Jake Liskow does a great job covering those for us at SpartanMag. Great job by Jake Liskow, Paul Konerdijk, Kenny Jordan, Jason Killip, recruiting anchor. Stupendous, doing a great job with basketball coverage, basketball recruiting coverage as well. He and Paul Konerdijk. So, also back then there was no internet, so the pressure was not the immediate boil that it is now. There was no transfer portal, so I think there was a little more of a feeling of patience for a 5-year plan that doesn't exist anymore. But so you're watching those seasons come along. And in 86, the year before Perlis broke through with the Big Ten Championship in 87, Michigan State did not go to a bowl game. 1999, the year before Nick Saban broke through with a top 10 team. In 98, the year before, they did not go to a bowl game. Each of those were year 4. Perlis, Saban. Pretty good coaches. That's just football. Basketball. I remember a night in December 1997. Happened to be the same night that Charles Woodson won the Heisman Trophy. I was at a wedding that night. My guy McFresh got married. Not that he watches. He's above this stuff. And I remember the next morning driving through McDonald's to get an Egg McMuffin with my girl, who's now my wife, and hearing that Michigan State basketball had lost to the University of Detroit. And I said, Izzo's done. He's done. He can't recover from this. It's not happening. I feel bad for Izzo. Good guy. It's year 3. First year NIT. Second year, people were waiting for Cleves. Cleves was injured from the rollover accident from Michigan, the Ford Explorer thing, which ruined Michigan's program for a while, but it ruined Cleves for a year. He was injured in year 1 as a freshman, NIT again. 2 years, 2 NIT. Into year number 3, Cleves is a sophomore, and Michigan State loses to U of D. And I'm like, it's over. Izzo's done. Not happening. They're going to need a new basketball coach in a couple of months. That was December 1997. "28 years later. Now, I said to myself, Izzo's done. I never said that publicly, because back then the internet was still in its infancy. I was on talk shows back then. They're not what they are now. The magazine was coming out in December. It was monthly. By the way, the next issue of Spartan Magazine that year, late December 97, into January actually. And Michigan State fans were down because there was a lot of, Michigan State football had started 5-0, lost to Michigan. Michigan won the national title. Michigan State kind of staggered and was blown out by Washington in the bowl game in Hawaii. Basketball looked terrible. And Michigan State fans need to feel a little bit better about themselves. And in the MSView column in December of 97, you can go find it if you can find it somewhere. I introduced the term Walmart Wolverine. Because if you can't be happy with yourself, rip on someone else. And Michigan State fans needed to rally about something. And at that time, there was a successful radio show in Detroit that made fun of Michigan State fans and Michigan State fans would try to call back in and make fun of that host, Greg Henson, a talented broadcaster who I met once and was a real nice guy. And Greg Henson, a Michigan fan, would say, he'd make fun of Michigan State and Greg didn't go to the University of Michigan, not that means everything, but he would rip on Michigan State, including the academics, which is, if you don't go to Michigan or any others, anyway, academic thing that doesn't fly real well in some arguments. Michigan State fans would call up and say, Greg, you're the worst kind of fan because you didn't even go to Michigan and you rip on Michigan State academics. And then he would make fun of people from Michigan State for being, I'm the worst kind of fan. Well, Michigan State fans needed stronger language than the worst kind of fan. And I can tell you why I came up with Walmart Wolverine. It's a longer story, but December 97, I remember it well. There were tough times for Michigan State. Among them, Tom Izzo was done. As Saban would say, done, dead, buried. You had us buried. I had Izzo done, dead, buried. 28 years later, was I right with that reaction? And that was 2 seasons plus into it. So you can forgive me if I don't make a judgment after a year and a quarter. Question number 5 also, let's go into question 6. We've heard Smith say several times now that they have had to get Marsh more targets. So why is that not happening? He signs off on the game plan each week. Why is that not happening? I'll get to that in a moment. Let's see, first of all, hey, let's talk about Roback. Let's talk about some good Michigan State attire. They are a sponsor for In On 3, sponsored SpartanMag.com. We appreciate their support, and they've got great products. Roback, this collection, the Michigan State stuff, check it out. Got a promotional code for you on how to get 20% off. Keep listening. And Roback, there's only one way to describe Roback. Best fit, best feel. For those of you that are not familiar with Roback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Roback has released some great new licensed items within the Roback Game Day collection. There are new novel polo designs and clean hoodie looks and Q-zip designs from some of your favorite schools or your favorite school, including Michigan State. It's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else in the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Not just hoodies and quarter zips. Check out the everyday shorts, Delta Performance pants, super comfortable, elastic waistband, and great fabric. Roback, it's the best. Roback spelled R-H-O-B-A-C-K, R-H-O-B-A-C-K.com, Roback.com. Use promotional code MSU20, MSU20, promotional code. Go to Roback.com, use that promotional code for 20% off for all new customers. That's spelled R-H-O-B-A-C-K.com, R-H-O-B-A-C-K.com. That's 20% off on all performance polos, shorts, and more. And the Michigan State stuff with MSU20. Check it out, and you'll be glad you did. And if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3, and you'll get up to a $1,500. That's 1,500 American dollars. First bet offer of $1,500 up to that on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. That's ON number 3. Bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to a $1,500 bonus in bonus bets if that $10 bet loses. The at least $10 bet. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Disclaimer here, betmgm.com for terms. Go to that website for terms. 21 and over only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-GAMBLER. And in New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In Massachusetts, call 1-800-327-5050. In Iowa, call 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Puerto Rico, call 1-800-981-0023. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. And this is done in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you've not signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Now, let's get back to the question from Stu and Troy. Again, he said, we've heard Smith say several times that they want to get Marsh more targets. So why is that not happening? All right. A couple of thoughts on that. You know, Brian Lindgren, Michigan State offensive coordinator, spoke with him on Tuesday. And as he said, you know, they put some plans together, some plays together, and they thought that each, you know, this is going to be played that'll get the ball to Marsh. This is going to play. This one looks good for Marsh. This one looks good for Marsh. But as things happen, reads change, pressure on the quarterback, different things happen. Is Childs not looking at him primarily enough? Fair question. So some of it's on quarterback choices. And as far as Smith, you know, they can say that going into the game, but I mean, is Smith on the headphones telling them, hey, let's get the ball to Marsh. Let's get the ball to Marsh. I mean, you don't see Smith doing a lot of communication there. Maybe it's happening at halftime. I'm not watching him every minute of every game, but when the television camera shows him, he's just kind of letting it fly. Now, maybe when he was a coordinator at Washington, maybe he didn't like a lot of buzz in his headset, but I don't know. Good question. Why are they not getting it to Marsh? Last game, you know, they got it to him on a hot read slant early in the game, which was nice. Alessio threw it to him a couple of times. But, you know, the one that really got into Marsh's skin, I thought, was a 3rd and 4. The game was 21-21 at that point. We talked about this in the VCast last weekend, this week. And Marsh had single coverage over here and threw a deep out to McCray. And he was heated up. I mean, Childs did not have a lot of time to drop back and make multiple reads throughout the course of the game due to faulty pass protection, got hurt early, and I think that obviously had an impact on his trust and patience. So you're seeing more one-read throws from him, which they don't want to have happen. And the coaches tell Childs, hey, you have to have a short memory. You have to trust it every single time. You know, whatever happened in the last play, you got to continue to trust it going forward. And Lindgren thought that Childs reverted back to being more of a one and done. Sometimes Marsh is a little further downfield, don't have time to look over there. And it's easy for a coach to tell a quarterback who's getting his brains beat out, hey, have more trust in the pass protection. That being said, both Lindgren and Smith were former quarterbacks, so they kind of know what it entails. So getting Marsh more targets. Marsh wants more, and, you know, you saw what happened on the sideline. If he doesn't get more, it's going to become more and more disruptive. You don't want that to happen either, but he is your best player. You need to get the ball in his hands somehow, some way. So it is incumbent on the coaches and the quarterback, I would think, to make that happen more often. You know, in terms of targets, we talked about this also in an article at SpartanMag.com. Marsh had 6 targets, which tied for most on the team. McCray had 6. So I guess you'd like to see Marsh get about 10 if you're throwing it 30 times. Through to the running back, Frazier 5 times, Tullis twice. That's 7 to the running backs. Velling 5. 2 or 3 of those were Alessio, but 5 to Velling. And so you're talking 12 of the, and Toliver 1, Parachek 1. But the Parachek target was just that flip that was almost the lateral touchdown. Still counts as one of the targets. So tight ends and running backs, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. You have Frazier 5, Velling 5, that's 10. Tullis 2, that's 12. Tolliver 13, Parachek 14, that's right. 30 pass attempts, 14 of the 30 were to tight ends and running backs. How often on this show have we heard from people saying, pose the question, hey, how come we don't get the ball to the tight end more? How come we don't throw to the running back more? A lot. It's a common refrain. Now, in this case, they threw short because of pressure problems, I think. But in this game, you throw more to the tight ends and running backs, and people want to know why you're throwing to the receivers more. Kelly had 3, Marsh had 6. So if you're throwing 30 times, it's hard to get everybody. If you want more targets for somebody, then who do you want to throw to less? You want to throw to Frazier less, maybe? Some of those were dump downs. He had 4 catches, 31 yards. Lost 5 yards on one play. I'll talk about that in a minute. All right, Stu in Troy, Michigan says, we've heard Smith say several times. Actually, question 7, DYK in Jennison says, how important is it that for our best players, how important is it that our best players need to step up right now? How important is it for the best players to step up right now? It's always important for the best players to step up. Unless you've got a ton of them and then you just kind of spread it around and you win no matter what. Right now against UCLA, yes, got to win this game. Really important. Childs, I don't think he was bad last game. I mean, he had no running game, no pass protection, and there's a 25-mile-an-hour wind thrown against the best pass defense in the country statistically. And they were good, and they do what they do best. The coverage is good, but they do a good job disguising their coverages. And on top of that, coming out of a bye week, they had even more disguises. So if you have more disguises, you really need a run game. So it was a harder puzzle for Childs than it normally would have been. And he's facing 3rd and long all the time and 2nd and long all the time because the run game's not good and there's no pass protection and it's windy and the coverage was good. So you can see why Childs was 9 out of 27 or whatever it was. To his credit, with all the heart that he has and leadership, he affected the game with his feet. A lot of times in freelance fashion, impromptu, just taking over, going backyard because nothing else was working. And he took some shots to do it. And his legs, a lot of times in freelance form, had a lot to do with those 2 touchdown drives that tied the game at 14-14 and took the 21-14 lead. So Childs, this game, not going to have the wind, not going to have as tight a coverage, not going to have as much of a pass rush. Theoretically, Michigan State's run game should be better. I would expect Childs to play better this weekend. Nick Marsh, I would expect him to get more targets. Interestingly, they'll be going against Demetrius Martin, who was on the Michigan State staff last year. So that's a little bit of an intel edge for UCLA. Sure, Michigan State knows Martin also, but Martin knowing Michigan State and knowing those receivers, that helps UCLA a little bit. But not just your best players in terms of Childs and Marsh. Also on defense, Malik Spencer. He's done a good job with some pass breaks up in the end zone to prevent touchdowns, but he's had little errors here and there. The tunnel screen that got out for the 49-yard touchdown, he kind of leveraged it wrong and let it get out. If he'd gotten outside in to his help, then that thing gets tackled probably for 15 or 20. I mean, it was a nice little play. Hit it with good timing and good precision. But Spencer kind of did that one wrong. And he's, he also on the 23-yard touchdown run that got out that made the score 31-21. I was talking a little bit to some insiders this week, and, they needed a safety fit as part of the run fit on that game, a little more immediate, and he kind of drifted and was blocked by a wide receiver. He got caught up along with Aiden West. Spencer needed to be more forceful on that one. So he's a good player who makes good impact plays, but you can't have those. There's a play against, I think, either Youngstown or USC. I think it was USC in a 3rd down conversion where he drifted too far. You might remember Jonathan Smith talking about the coverage needed to be tighter, and sometimes the drops were too deep. Spencer did that once. Not a lot of negative plays for him, but some ill-timed ones. Same things with Josh Eaton. Talked about that, the 4th down play against USC when Michigan State had cut it to 7, and they hit an out route against a deep dropping cover 3. I mean, he needed to play the sticks, and it's just too easy right there. And then in this game, the turning point of the game, Michigan State's up 7. It's 3rd and 10 at Nebraska's own 25-yard line. Nebraska fans are booing. Michigan State's one play away from getting the ball back with a 7-point lead with 30 seconds to go in the 3rd quarter. They come with that unbalanced formation. Talked about this in the VCast yesterday. Tight end Lyndon Wood is covered up. Michigan State had to figure out what's going on. They brought corners over, so it's man-to-man. Declares man-to-man before the snap. Not only is it man-to-man, but it's off man-to-man to the number 3 receiver. Number 3 receiver from outside in. 1, 2, and 3 is the innermost receiver of the 3. Eaton came over and had that guy. Pass defense, Michigan State does not do a lot because teams don't go quads over with one covered up. So he's on Ja'Cory, what's his name? Wide receiver for Nebraska. Turns him loose on a deep out, gained about 45 yards. They scored 2 plays later. Tie game changed right then. He runs a stutter, out, and up. And against off, we know it's man-to-man based on how Michigan State came over with 3 corners over. Not just 2 corners, they had 3 corners because they had a corner also in as a nickelback in the situation. So 3 corners over here. So it's going to be man-to-man. I mean, theoretically, you can have 3 corners over and still drop into zone, but that would take a lot of practice time and expertise and veteran know-how. So you just don't do that. It was pre-snap man-to-man. It's the way a game is sometimes. You know it's man-to-man. Not only do you know it's man-to-man, you know that it's off coverage. And off coverage is a little bit weaker, is a little more susceptible to the stutter and go. Stutter and go doesn't work as well in press. But it's off man-to-man, stutter, out, and up. And he bid on the stutter out. And it's the same guy that was too deep in that cover 3 against USC. Talked about this with Mubi a little bit. Did Nebraska look at it and say, okay, that guy that made that mistake against USC, if we get him in man-to-man and if it's off coverage, we can get him to bite on something in a third down situation because of what happened at USC? Maybe. Is that an option route? Receiver sees that it's off man-to-man. Does it automatically become a stutter and go? I don't know. But he bid on it. That was not a miscommunication. That was just getting beat on something, which is going to happen against some teams. But you mentioned about, do your best players need to be their best right now? Yes. And that's not just Childs and Marsh. That's also Spencer and Eaton. Asking a lot of those guys, but that's what it's going to take right now to win this game and then go find another win or two somewhere else, at Indiana, at Iowa, at Minnesota, or against Michigan. And then you got to beat Maryland. Maryland, I mean, Washington looks pretty good. I was watching Maryland-Washington last night. Washington's the quarterback. They lost that game to the Huskies. He's a freshman quarterback, but they do some pretty entertaining stuff. What Maryland looks like in December, what Michigan State looks like at that time remains to be seen. It's going to be interesting. Question 8, Spartan MD from West Bloomfield says, any updates on young offensive linemen, especially Justin Bell, number 62? My answer, I wait to hear from coaches on development of players. Justin Bell is with the scout team right now, so coaches are not seeing him from day to day. Probably during the bye week, they may have had a practice that intermingled some of the scout team guys back up with the varsity, unquote. That's what Saban used to call the first and second strings, the varsity. I don't think they call it that anymore. I call it, I don't know. So maybe they took a look at Bell there. I'm not sure. I looked at Bell in the spring, and he has a long way to go. He's a true freshman. Other young offensive linemen. Let's see. Well, Rustin Young's looking better. I've not seen much from the Lunyeskis. I haven't seen them on the field. They're on the field a little bit last year against Prairie View. One of them has been injured. So not seen any mop-up situations yet, but obviously they're not part of that fringe playing group yet. Ernie from Colorado asks, it's been 10 years since Michigan State's had a solid offensive line. The number of free rushers getting to the quarterback and the constant hits on running backs that they're taking in the backfield is just absurd, says Ernie from Colorado. He says, is it a technique issue? Is the scheme off? Or does it look like they don't even know who they're supposed to block? Seriously, why do we keep having an offensive line? We have to try to win despite their errors. Great, fair question. And that is the $1 million question right now. Coming into the season, we talked about Aiden Childs needed to take a step, and I think he has. The defense needed to take a step. That's still in progress. There was some positive signs last week. Offensive line needed to make a step, no question about it. Wide receivers needed to take a step. They have. Running backs, didn't know much about them. Hope for the best. Frazier's been functional. I think he's been all right. I think he'd be all right if the offensive line were better. The offensive line had to become better. It's not. Not yet. It still might become that, but not yet. So you're asking, is it a technique issue? Is the scheme off? The scheme, I wouldn't say the scheme. Mahalchik's a proven coach. They had success at Oregon State. Now, is it harder for some of those things to work in the Big Ten? I'm not sure. Jonathan Smith was talking about some of the things they learned in the first year in the Big Ten. The line of scrimmage, the defensive line is different. It's better. Does that mean the things they did at Oregon State I'm not going to say they won't work, because a lot of things they do are things Michigan and Iowa have done in the run game over the years. Now, I know Iowa's offense has been bad in recent years, but they've had when they've been on, they've been pretty good. So you can still do it, but does it take a different level of strength, I don't want to say different type of coaching. I mean, outside zone is outside zone, inside zone is inside zone, duo is duo. So it's not like schematically they're doing the wrong things. It's not like, I'm at practice, I'm watching Mahalchik, and he's getting a lot done, seems to. And he's very demanding. Over and over, he doesn't like it, do it again. Doesn't like it, we're doing that wrong. That's good, you're doing this. I mean, it looks to me like he's on it, and his resume is good. He's had success in the past. So far be it for me to say that the scheme or the coaching is off there, but there's no question the results haven't been there. So is it a technique issue? We hear about mistargeting and miscommunication. We heard about mistargeting again a few times in this game. And let's see, I think I had something over here. I had something saved. I'll have to find it again. Mistargeting was a problem in terms of once in a while blocking the wrong guy. Happened a few times. It only needs to happen once or twice to be one of many things that upset a run game in a particular Saturday. Now, in the article at SpartanMag.com, I looked at Michigan State's third down problems and drilled that down to problems on first and second down and problems with the run game on first and second down. And also in the third quarter, Jonathan Smith was talking about the problems they had in the run game in the third quarter. Michigan State had like 5 plays in the third quarter, conventional run plays, that 4 of them lost yardage and 1 of them was a gain of 0. So I looked at those 5 plays just as a sample study. There was a first and 10 to the 34-yard line. Brandon Tullis, loss of 2. Actually, let me back it up a little bit. First and 10 at the 48-yard line. Frazier stopped for no gain. Inside zone. Lepo was beaten inside on that one. Nebraska defensive end ducked past him inside, shoulder dip. Lepo got beat on that. First and 10 at the 48. I'm sorry, I think this is second and 10. I've got a typo there. Frazier, loss of 2. Split zone. Nebraska's defensive tackle, shoulder wiped Michigan State center, Matt Gulbin. Gulbin's a good player, having a good season, but not on that play. Penetration. Offensive guard Caleb Carter also missed his block on the Husker safety who was filling late. So you got Carter and Gulbin both missing blocks. Carter, I thought, was surprisingly good, the opener against Western Michigan. I realize Western Michigan is not great. They've had some good moments this season. But Carter has steadily kind of lost traction as the season's gone along. Can he get that reversed as competition gets better? That's going to be difficult. So on that one, Gulbin and Carter. Third one, Tullis stopped, loss of 2. Toss sweep to the bunch side. Tight end Masunis gets out on a linebacker along with Lepo. It's a double team block on the perimeter with a linebacker. Lepo and Masunis, 2 of them going after a linebacker, point of attack. That one linebacker splits the double team and makes the tackle. And Masunis does one of these afterwards. Felt bad. Good players, having a pretty good season. Good blocker. Not on that play. Different players, different plays, making mistakes. You hear players and coaches talk about, we have 10 guys doing the right thing and one guy kind of just, slippage. I'm telling you where the slippage was on these 5 plays, these 5 negative run plays. I mean, we could talk about the running game sucks or whatever, but I look under the hood to see what the hell's going wrong. And this is what I saw. It takes some time to look into these things, but I got time. Second and 5 at the 17-yard line. Now, sometimes it takes till Thursday to do this. I mean, I could hit play and have a podcast on Sunday and not know what the hell actually happened under the hood and call it a podcast and not know jack crap about what happened and just be like most other podcasters around the country. I'm sorry this is on Thursday, but it took some time to put some stuff together. Second and 5 at the 17-yard line. And there's some good podcasters out there also, but it takes some time to have a little bit of quality control. Second and 5, 17-yard line. Frazier stopped on an inside run for a loss of 2. This one was largely Frazier's fault. First of all, Caleb Carter gave up some movement, gave up some penetration to a Husker defensive lineman, which caused Frazier to pause. Now, Nebraska on that play had 5 down linemen, which they do periodically. Like 5 defensive linemen, they're all down, which is uncommon. So they're covering all 5 offensive linemen. Michigan State had a tight end attached, so it's 6 against 5 up front, not counting some of the linebackers in the area. But it was one-on-one blocking across the board, except Michigan State got a double team in one area, which was Lepo and Christian Phillips. By the way, Phillips is playing better. Phillips and Lepo on that play got a little bit of movement. And if Frazier had just taken it to the double team there, he would have gained a yard and a half, maybe 2. Doesn't sound great, but it's better than dancing around and having a loss of 2. So they've had some dancing issues in the past. They want to get away from that, plant and go. And if it's just a yard, that's better than a loss of 2. So they're still training that mentality for a young and experienced running back. Other one, 2nd and 5 at the 25-yard line. Toss play to the strong side. Jaden Savory in motion, and he chooses to block. He's a lead blocker at the point of attack, and he chooses to block a cornerback when a linebacker is running free. Should he have turned and logged to the linebacker? Maybe. I don't know. He's an inexperienced player. Hasn't played a lot of snaps. Maybe. I'm not sure. Also on that play, Connor Moore was a frontside puller, and he allowed a play side defensive end from Nebraska, play side defensive end, pulling Connor Moore, play side defensive end for Nebraska, just defeated that block, got off the block, made the tackle. Connor Moore got beat on that play. I think Connor Moore's a pretty good player. He's had a pretty good season, not on that play. So I just illustrated 5 failure run plays in the third quarter. Could not get the running game going. Could not get the running game going against USC for a long time. Then all of a sudden they found something in the third quarter, and that helped with the comeback. So it's wildly inconsistent. Is it technique? On some of those, I mean, some of it is identification, where if Savory identifies the right guy, maybe that one's different. It's identification. Maybe if Tullis takes that upfield, maybe gains 1 or 2 instead of losing 2. Technique on that double team with that linebacker. I'm not sure what the tight end or Lepo could have done differently. I don't coach offensive line. I'm not sure. All I know is the technique of that linebacker was super, splitting that thing. And when that linebacker came and took on pulling Lepo to defeat that block and make the tackle, it's a game of blocking and tackling. Part of a game of blocking and tackling is defeating blocks, and Nebraska did a good job defeating blocks. Wide receiver blocking for Michigan State was not good on occasion. We talk about, we'll get to that in a moment. I've got it here in my notes and an example of that. Question 10, Mike from Macomb, Michigan says, can you recall a more important home game for a Michigan State football coach in regards to job security than this homecoming game against UCLA? Not in a while. It is important, not in terms of job security, but, in terms of fan belief, which is an important part of job security. But in terms of fan belief, yeah, if you lose this game, it's rough, really rough, because you're, at its, the truest definition of things, you will have lost to UCLA, who fired their coach in year 2, and they come to your place, beat you at your place at noon, 9 a.m. their time. What does that say about your program? Not good. So the optics of that would not be good. Don't want to go there yet. But right now you're asking if there's ever been a more important game in terms of job security. I wouldn't say job security. In terms of job confidence among the fan base, it's been a while. There have been others, but not. D'Antonio never had something. He had some years that got a little squirrely, after losing to Central Michigan, but they righted the ship pretty soon afterwards on most cases. Same thing with Saban, same thing with Perlis, despite a number of 500 type years. But not really. I've not really, just my opinion, before a game, sensed fright from fans like this since the John L. Smith or Bobby Williams era. But I wouldn't say security is on the line, but I'm talking about confidence. Mike adds, he says, in my opinion, if he loses this game, then it will be very hard for him to get the program to where J-Bat and the fan base expects it to be. Next game is at Indiana, where they will be a 3 or 4 touchdown underdog, and we all know Sig will run it up if he can. And then your next home game is against Michigan. Got to be 4-3 heading into the rivalry game. 3-4 in Spartan Stadium. We'll have lots of maize and blue. And hey, that's Mike from Macomb, and I don't disagree with a lot of that. Question 11, Kent from Crows, Virginia. He says the E is silent, or the T is silent, but I don't know if it means Crozet or Crows. Anyway, he's originally from Grand Haven, Michigan. He says, this one's a little bit heartfelt. He says, I grew up going to Spartan games with my dad from 5 years old until my mid-30s when my dad passed away tragically. Sorry about that, Kent from Virginia, originally Grand Haven. He says, it seemed like I was the only Spartan fan during my elementary and high school days in the 1990s. That was in Grand Haven. That's hard to hear because That's on the other side of, that's West Michigan. And you're closer to East Lansing than you are to Ann Arbor, but there's some Notre Dame fans out there also. He says, it seemed like I was the only Spartan fan during my elementary and high school days in the 1990s, which helped create a strong backbone. I was only allowed to wear Spartan gear on Mondays after a loss. Maybe it's due to getting older, but that backbone seems to be weakening with each disappointing season. These last few years have sucked the love of Spartan football out of me. Almost, he says. He says, I'm looking for you to be a hope merchant here. Not my job. He says, paint me a picture of how Michigan State returns to playing nationally relevant, important games again. I'm under no delusion the Spartans will regularly be 10-2. I'm just looking for some passionate, sound, inspiring football again. I thought Michigan State would be respectable this year. It hasn't happened yet. Good news is they get to practice. We'll see what it looks like this weekend. They say the practices have been great. Sometimes that's a kiss of death, I know some people say. 10-2 program, I understand that you said that you're not expecting 10-2. And I misread your question initially, and I just read it again, and I get it. Nationally relevant games. You're saying how long? Just looking for some passionate, sound, inspiring football again. I'm glad you said that you're not expecting 10-2. You can expect 10-2, and that can be a goal, or 11-1. But just realize how rare that is. I mean, that's several steps away from where they are right now. And if they get to become a 10-2 program, it probably won't be with these current players. It'll be probably the next generation. You know, things can happen quickly. Next year's schedule is somewhat favorable. Childs is good and getting better. You know, if Childs and Marsh can take a next step next year and the offensive line comes around, the schedule is manageable, more manageable next year. I think it is possible, to get into that 7 or 8 win, maybe more. I mean, things change so much in college football. It's so hard to know who's going to be what. I mean, Clemson, Texas, and Penn State were in the top 7, top 10 in the country in terms of Penn State and Texas, top 5. And now it's not even mid-October, and Texas and Penn State are out of the top 25. Virginia's come up out of nowhere, pretty good. Florida State, I mean, if Florida State loses to Pittsburgh this year, they're going to want to get rid of that guy. A&M looks good, but Elko inherited a lot of NFL talent. Of course, and everyone knows Indiana was a big surprise last year and a surprise again this year. College football, to pretend right now to forecast what Michigan State's going to be next year, I can't do that, of course. But if they get this other crap together, Michigan State does get some scheduling breaks next year, I would think. Although if you looked at the schedule 2 years ago, you never would have thought last year it would have been a scheduling. You wouldn't know that Indiana and Illinois would be tough games on your schedule last year, the year before. So it's hard to digest all of that. But if Childs and Marsh stay together, the offensive line gets better and the run game gets more experienced, help from the portal, defense, another year in the system, theoretically can get better. Next year, they could take some steps towards some nationally relevant games. I'm not talking about top 10 games. I'm not talking about 10-2. When you talk about getting, first thing you need to do is get to 7 wins or 8 wins. That's not easy. It'll take some progress to get there. Now, D'Antonio got to 11-1 in year 4, but the Big Ten was much weaker back then. And I love D'Antonio. He's great. But 11-1 that year, they did not beat one top 10 team. The highest ranked team they beat was number 11, Wisconsin, and that took some doing. Wisconsin was really good back then. State beat them by a touchdown here. Then Michigan State lost at Iowa 37-6. Iowa was number 18 in the country. Michigan State was unbeaten. Iowa brought them back to earth. It was a tie for the Big Ten championship. Wisconsin won the tiebreaker. Wisconsin upset Ohio State, which went 11-1. Wisconsin went to the Rose Bowl, lost to TCU. Ohio State went to the Sugar Bowl, beat Arkansas. Michigan State went to the Citrus Bowl and was destroyed by Alabama 49-7. The Big Ten was not as strong back then. It was easier to go 11-1. Penn State was unranked when Michigan State beat them. Notre Dame was unranked when Michigan State beat them in overtime. Michigan was ranked number 18 when Michigan State beat them by 17 points. Illinois, Minnesota, Purdue, and Northwestern were down. They were on Michigan State's schedule. Michigan State did not play Ohio State. So Michigan State went 11-1. But they had their crap together. They're a good, solid team, That Michigan State team with last year's schedule might go 9-3. And that was one of the high watermarks of the D'Antonio era. 10 wins in the Saban era. Michigan State did it once in year 5. Perlis' best year, they were 9-2 and 1 Rose Bowl year. So these 10-win seasons that you're talking about historically are rarities at Michigan State. You can say that's what you're aiming for, but if you're firing coaches for not getting to 10 wins, then you're going to be what Oklahoma was in the years after Switzer, what Notre Dame was in the years after for a little bit after Dan Devine and a little bit after Holtz. Michigan after Schembechler. Alabama after Bear Bryant went through a succession of coach. If you keep firing coaches, Tennessee for 20 years, Auburn, or you can be what Michigan State is now. You can say that's not much better, but you can't be firing coaches because you're not winning at the clip that LSU and Texas demand. They're different resources down there. So for Michigan State to be a 10-2 program in the current Big Ten means you're a top 10 team. If you're 10-2 in the Big Ten now, you're a top 10 team. And you've got Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, USC, Washington, throwing Indiana and Illinois for now, and Iowa. It's getting 8 wins is not easy, and it's a pretty good. Takes a pretty good team to go 8-4 in the Big Ten these days. And it's going to take building block after building block after building block. In some ways, it needs to happen quickly. In some ways, it needs to happen methodically. And it's the same old elements: blocking, tackling, culture, disciplined execution, recruiting, having your crap together, evaluation, player development, all of those things. It's not just NIL by players. You have to have the culture. You have to have the disciplined execution. And discipline and culture are important. Smith is a big part of what he wants to do is instill those. And in a lot of ways, I think those are being instilled. It's not showing up on the field yet, though. Question 12, Amasio from Perrysburg, Ohio. He says, what is your honest opinion as to our program's rank in the Big Ten as a whole? This dovetails off that previous question. Michigan State's rank in the Big Ten as a whole. I would say in terms of natural potential football resources, natural football resources, your fan base, donor level, brand, image, history, support, facilities, recruiting pull, recruiting base, recruiting talent in the 5-hour radius. Pretty good recruiting radius around here, but you also have Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State around here also. Even if you take away Penn State. Mubi was talking about this earlier this week. He and I were talking about this. Like, where does Michigan State rank? And that goes along with this question. And that should set your parameters as what your expectations and demands should be. In terms of natural football resources, Michigan State is behind Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. I think everybody would agree with that. You could still beat them. Sometimes if you really have it going, you can beat them on a regular basis. But in terms of starting point resources, they've got more riches. You can turn that around over time. For instance, when Tom Izzo took over here for basketball, they were behind Michigan in terms of brand and recruiting power. Now, Michigan was cheating like crazy. That was part of it. But it took a good 20 years, and then Michigan State got to where they could out-recruit Michigan, but still had to really, really hustle to do it. And nowadays, you'll still see Michigan beat Michigan State for a recruit and vice versa. It's a tangle when they recruit against each other. But it took years and years and years and years, and he kept getting knocked down by the street agents because he wouldn't play ball with them. Different story. Anyway, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State are ahead of Michigan State. I think Michigan State is slightly ahead of Iowa and Wisconsin in terms of natural football resources. Now, Iowa is consistently good. They have every reason to disagree with me on that. That's my perception. That's also the perception of Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer felt that was the case in 2003 when he was head coach at Bowling Green, when Michigan State did not pursue him. Urban Meyer went to Utah. Michigan State hired John L. Smith. Then Urban Meyer went undefeated, went to Florida. Then they fired John L. Smith, and Izzo was working with Hollis to find a successor. And Izzo called Urban Meyer to ask him about Charlie Strong, his defensive coordinator at the time, who interviewed with Michigan State and was a candidate for the job. You know, different people in that coaching search had different people that they talked to. So Izzo spoke with Meyer, and Meyer told Izzo exactly that Michigan State is a little bit ahead of Iowa and Wisconsin. He felt that way in 03. Urban Meyer felt that way in 07. Now, the Big Ten has changed since then. NIL has changed since then. You might look at NIL and say, well, geez, Iowa has a better NIL structure than Michigan State. That might be the case. So, but prior to NIL, Michigan State was ahead of those. Michigan State could still probably jump in that regard. Iowa's more successful right now, better program. I'm talking in terms of natural football resources, which includes recruiting base, but not by much. So fourth in the Big Ten, maybe ahead of Iowa and Wisconsin. Now you add Oregon, USC, and Nebraska. Michigan State's maybe equal with Washington, even though Washington has had more winning seasons in the last 30 years, I think, than Michigan State. Neuheisel talks about a time when he was head coach that Washington had had 25 straight winning seasons. Washington's a strong brand, strong program. You know, they're kind of right there with Michigan State, Iowa, Wisconsin in some ways. So 8th or 9th in the Big Ten, if and well NIL for Michigan State is at full speed, which right now I'm not sure it is. I don't think it is. I know it's not. So that's just in terms of football resources and recruiting pull. Now, Nebraska has wavered. They've had a lot of bad seasons. Everybody knows that. But their facilities are the best in the Big Ten. I got that from somebody who has a kid who was recruited by everybody in the Big Ten. He said Nebraska's facilities are the best. I'm like, which ones? Well, their training table, what they get for food, their cafeteria for the players, massage tables, red light therapy, and not just one, but like 7 or 8 red light therapy stations for players, cold tub, huge cold tub sauna, which is a big deal for cardio these days. I mean, MMA fighters swear by sauna to help your heart rate or your cardio. They've got sauna for Michigan State's new hockey program. That's kind of a new age conditioning things. Do they have it for Michigan State football yet? I don't know. The cafeteria thing that Alan Haller put together with the new Izzo football building, it's not built yet. That's the next phase. It's my understanding. So the training table thing for Michigan State is not as attractive. Now, I heard during the Tucker era, Michigan State food-wise, what was catered in and stuff, and their food swipe where they can eat at IHOP or go to the grocery store. It's not Nebraska. Facilities need to get better across the board. A lot of places. I don't know where Michigan State is on those things right now. I'll have to ask around a little bit. But anyway, when I say facilities in Nebraska are the best, that's what I hear from parents of players that have been to different places. So you can say Nebraska's not been good in a long time, but the facilities are top notch. The support is top notch in Nebraska. Obviously, 400 straight sellouts, all those things. So Nebraska's ahead of Michigan State in terms of natural football resources, even though, and they need to have all those things great because they don't have centralized great recruiting base. So you're behind Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. You're behind now, talking about the Big Ten, Oregon, USC, Nebraska. So that's 6 on my abacus. So you're 7th at best, right there with Washington, Iowa, Wisconsin, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're between 7 and 10 with Iowa, Wisconsin, Washington. I think I counted everybody. So I think my answer was between 7 and 10. You're asking me, where's Michigan State in the Big Ten? 7, honest opinion, programs rank in the Big Ten as a whole, 7 to 10. So you need to really outperform some name programs to get up to be 4th in the Big Ten, to be 3rd in the Big Ten to get to the playoffs. You have to outperform people that have a faster car than you do, which is possible, but it's not easy at all. None of this is easy. And for people to say that, well, we should be 8-4, 9-3 at best. Well, yeah, tell that to Nebraska, USC, Oregon, and Washington, and did I say Nebraska, and Penn State, and Ohio State, Michigan. Tell them that they should be, tell 5 of those 8 teams that they should be below Michigan State. They tell you that you're crazy. It's difficult, and I understand that fans are demanding, and they want good football. I'm just saying, when and if Michigan State rises again, Michigan State will rise again. And when Michigan State's good, recognize how difficult that is. And I tried to tell you guys when D'Antonio had it rolling, how special that was. And when he had a couple seasons that were 6-6, 7-5, and people were ready to quit on him, I'm like, you guys are crazy. You don't understand how good he's been. And if anyone knows how to pull them out of it, it would be him. Now, a lot of people thought he should have made some changes here and there. Maybe so. But Michigan State, historically good, top 25 program. but Michigan State is not the New York Yankees. When they do well, they have to be operating at a 99 percentile clip. All pistons, all cylinders need to be pumping 100% rate. All tires need to be perfectly inflated. Some of these programs, like Michigan, they've had some struggles here and there. Michigan, LSU, I don't know. You can be a little bit off kilter and still win 7, 8, 9 games just on turnkey talent here and there. Michigan State, when things are off kilter, it goes to 4, 5, 6 wins. All right, let's see. Mike from West Palm Beach, Florida says, I think one of the highest priorities of the offseason was to shore up our running game, specifically in regards to eliminating pure running back plays that are stopped for no gain or negative yards. That has not happened at all. And at Nebraska, there were 5 or 6 specific running back plays that ended up as tackle for loss. This is head scratching, says Mike from West Palm Beach, Florida. When people talk about lack of coaching in regards to proper scheme execution, this is example A of that, in my opinion. A good question from Mike from West Palm Beach. Those are all good points. I went over those 5 plays in the third quarter and what was at fault there, but I don't think you really asked a question. I think you made a statement, and you make good, valid points. I can't argue with any of that, and they need to show some improvement there on the offensive line, and they're not going to be better as a team until that gets squared away and some of the other loose ends get squared away. When and if that happens, I'm not sure. Question 14, Mike from Riverdale, Michigan says, Jim, from a 30,000-foot view, what do you think is the biggest reason that what Smith and his staff did at Oregon State just is not translating at Michigan State? Even early in his tenure, he was losing games, but the operation was way cleaner than what we've seen. Penalties were relatively low, guys were in position and not missing assignments, etc. What part of that is getting lost in the translation at Michigan State? Well, year 2 at Oregon State, I can't say that I've watched any of those game films. They were 2-10 in year number 1, and then in year 2 they were 5-7. So this was posted to the Underground Bunker message board. Over there at the Underground Bunkers, somebody took Mike from Riverdale to task and said, what are you talking about? There's no way you watched games at Oregon State, in 2019. And he said, no, yeah, I did. I went back and watched them. Well, maybe you did, Mike. I have not. So I don't know what happened that year when they went 5-7, but I do know, looking at the scores, Oregon State in year number 2 under Smith, they gave up 50 plus points 3 times. So on defense, maybe they were outgunned. Maybe there were some missed assignments. I'm not sure, but I don't know much about year 2 and what they had at Oregon State and how much better it was or was not than it is here right now. I might have to go back and take a look if I get a minute on Friday. Friday night's usually when I get a little time. After we write the pre-snap read, I'll watch a little bit of some high school games. If I'm not at a high school game, I'll go back and watch some games from last weekend, which I missed, and maybe I'll go back and watch an Oregon State game from that year if I can find one. In the meantime, as you know, a message from Shupan. As you know, Michigan State's recycling rate has fallen from 90% to 73% in recent years. Michiganders are squandering $105 million per year by not taking back their bottles and cans. That's hurting our environment in the state of Michigan and elsewhere. But anyway, in the state of Michigan, that's what we're talking about right now with Shupan. So help the environment in the state of Michigan. Help yourself. They're your beaches, your roads, and they're your lakes. So take them back. Take those bottles and cans back. Take them back. A message from Shupan, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling and dedicated to your Michigan State Spartans. They're your beaches, your lakes, your roads, your lakes. Speaking of which, when I was at Manhattan Beach for the USC Michigan State game the night before the game, Friday night, went down there, put my toe in the Pacific Ocean, went out to the pier, watched some guys surfing, had a good time, breathed in some Pacific Coast air, went to a place called the Rockin' Fish, had some ahi, oak grilled. I didn't know oak was a great wood for grilling, but apparently it is because it was delicious. Sat at the bar, watched the Rutgers-Iowa game, watched Kershaw pitch on TV, talked to some people. Lady next to me, older lady, big Kershaw fan. Had a great conversation with her for a long time. Really enjoyed speaking with her. And we're talking about this and that, where we're from and all those things. And, she'd grown up there in the Manhattan Beach area, and she's not watching this. She's probably in her 70s, early 70s, sports fan. She was friends with the bartender, so she was there on Friday night, having a nice time. I'm eating at the bar and talking to her about sports and stuff. Mentioned, wife and kids and these type of things. Showed her picture of wife and kids and skating out on the lake. Wintertime, which was bizarre to her, playing hockey on a lake. And she was like, lake. Wow, that sounds so good. A lake. This is a lady who grew up on the Pacific Ocean. But to her, a lake sounded like nice. And obviously something she hadn't experienced a lot. I know they've got Lake Tahoe and so forth, which is wonderful. But Chupan, they're your lakes, your beaches, your roads. Those lakes, if we live in the state of Michigan, let's not take those for granted. Those are wonderful resources, not just the Great Lakes, but the inland lakes, many of which are just wonderful in the state of Michigan. I love it. All right. What do we have here? Question 15. I didn't put the person's name on this one. So this is from the Masked Avenger from Parts Unknown. He says, does the current environment allow for a 3 to 4 year rebuild process? The current environment allow for a 3 to 4 year rebuild process? That's another great question. Obviously not at UCLA. They got a year and a couple of games. I think it should allow for a 3 or 4 year rebuilding process. Perlis got 5 years. Frank Beamer got 5 years. Virginia Tech. It should, but the transfer portal and the internet message boards have changed a lot. Transfer portal, people think that you can do it quickly, and some teams do it more quickly. And the message boards amplify the pressure. I mean, after this, Michigan State's lost to Nebraska. Michigan State's 3-2. All the games are on TV now also, which was not the case in the 70s when Muddy Waters was struggling. He was 3 and done. But now there's a loss and the message boards blow up, and there's people in the media that think that means something. It does when fans stop going to games, and a groundswell of angst is not good, is not positive, and it can eventually hurt. But the initial wave of immediate knee-jerk reaction really means nothing, because the administration, they're the people that make the decisions. Now, the board of trustees, ADs, are they aware of it? Yes, but it's not really gotten to that level yet. It's just now, if donors get mad, that's a thing, but I'm not sure there's bull in China shop donor situation and pressure in Michigan State right now. So some people are like, man, all these Michigan State fans, they're ready to quit on Jonathan Smith. They're all mad. I'm like, who's mad? All those people on the message boards. I'm like, so. And I love the people on the message boards, Underground Bunker message board. That's where we're at. That's where we field these questions. I love the passion. I love the people that want to win now. And they're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. And I love those people. I appreciate that they spend money to subscribe to Paramount to watch games and get tickets and tailgate and all that. I get it. But they're not the ones making the decisions. And if they were the ones that were making decisions at every program across the country, then you'd have 80 firings every year. And that just doesn't make much sense. But it's good to have the passion. I think that's great. Question 16, Brad in Long Island City says, can you go deep on Rakeem Johnson, redshirt freshman offensive lineman? He asks, Brad in Long Island City asks, is it Long Island City? He says, what's keeping Rakeem from being ready to play? What trajectory is he on? What position is his best fit? Who is he competing with for playing time? Great questions. That's a big mystery. And I asked some people about that this week. Asked Lindgren about it a little bit. I think I asked someone about it last week. Rakeem Johnson last year played 104 snaps as a true freshman without spring practice, and I thought was surprisingly functional. Athletic, did pretty well, had to start at left tackle against Ohio State, had to play meaningful reps at right tackle on a few occasions, and was not ideal. He's 6'3", but battled, and as an 18, 19-year-old true freshman, looked pretty good, and he's looked promising, and he's athletic. They put him at center during spring practice. He's the center of the future behind Gulbin right now. They repped him at right tackle a little bit just to cross-train him and get him ready. Ramil with his injuries, they've had the right tackle rotation. So Rustin Young came in and played against USC, did okay. Last year, Rakeem Johnson was better than Rustin Young. This year, Rustin Young is ahead at left tackle, and Rakeem has played a couple different positions. Gulbin has played every snap at center this year. They've not rotated that position. I mean, at the end of Youngstown, do they have someone else come in? I can't remember. I think Gulbin's played every snap at center. And Lepo was hurt for a couple weeks, came back last week, struggled. So when Lepo was out and Ramil was out, you had Connor Moore at right tackle and Rustin Young, and Rakeem did not get in there. Then, Luka Vincic gets hurt, and I asked Jonathan Smith, do you look at Rakeem Johnson? Do you move him to guard because you've lost Vincic? And he's like, yeah, we looked at it, we talked about it, but he didn't really say what the final decision was. But Rakeem Johnson, with his athleticism, has some versatility. Like I said, height-wise at 6'3", you can kind of get away with that a little bit easier at center. And with his mobility, the ability to snap and pull and get on the perimeter with an extra guy you can utilize that in the run game, the stretch plays and so forth. Long term, I think he's center of the future. Right now, with the problems they're having with Ramil not being back for another 2, 3, 4 weeks, and Lepo struggling, you got Rustin Young, Connor Moore, and not much else. It seems like Rakeem Johnson should be able to get in there and help, right? If he's good enough last year to get on the field and play functionally as a true freshman without spring practice, you would think he's even better this year. He's played 4 snaps. He played at the end of the Youngstown game, and I watched him all 4 snaps, and he charged off the line, and he played hungry and eagerly. At 6'3", 280, 290 maybe, his size is not ideal. So I've heard some things like just the size is not there. So, but still, can it be worse than what we saw at Nebraska? It's a guy that's already played last year as a true freshman better than what we saw there. You raise a great question. I don't have a good answer for it. 6'3", 290 is what he is. It seems like with the problems there and the fact that he plugged in last year and helped, it seems like he should have been able to plug in this year and helped. Nebraska with the crowd noise, that was a problem that some people had trouble with. Smith said something about that might have been an issue with tackle rotation for this game. I don't know. But there's a lot of problems on the offensive line, and he's not really been tapped to help. And a lot of questions there. I don't know the answers. Mahalchik, I don't think has spoken to the media since before the season started, so it would have been interesting to talk to him this week. We had Lindgren for questions this week. That was good also, but he kind of mentioned that kind of delegates to Mahalchik. So if and when things turn around in the offensive line, I think Johnson will be a part of it at some point. He is healthy. He's playing on special teams. But you raise good questions, and that's something I've been curious about myself. Question 18, NJ from Northville says, what are your thoughts on the offensive coordinator? It seems like we have some really good wide receivers, but don't really use them on short or intermediate throws. Well, I mean, you look at the pass patterns and the concepts. They sprinkle in short throws to wide receivers. I think 2 plays that looked really good early in the USC game. They ran an RPO slant to Marsh for like 17 yards. Looked great. And didn't really see that again. There was a hot read against Nebraska. They blitzed, broke off a hot read slant. Marsh gained about 10, 11 yards. Looked pretty good. There was a counter boot roll to Marsh for about 15 yards. Childs hit him on that one. Had the tight end with him in the same area too, which was a mistake. So they'll do it here and there. Short and intermediate throws. I'd like to see, Michigan State does not do much RPO because they're under center a lot. They prefer to be an under center type of team. Then when they're in shotgun, you don't want to be. I think that RPO is something that could work there, but it takes a lot of time to do those, or to get that ingrained into the mindset of everybody. But gosh, it looked good on that one play against USC. There's a long list of things they'd like to get to in 60 plays. 30 run plays, 30 pass plays. So you got 30 pass plays, not counting some of the, so you're thrown to the tight ends and backs sometimes also. But I agree, it'd be nice to be good at everything. Those are a couple of things that they're a little short on. You said, could they design schemes around Childs better, you asked, NJ in Northville. Play to his strengths as a runner and a thrower. I thought that against USC, with the trouble they were having protecting the quarterback, some of his better players were on the move, whether it be rollout or scramble. He's throwing better on the run these days, I think. I'm not at practice. They make decisions based on what they see in practice. So they know more about football than I do, so they're going to tailor it in better than I know how. But just watching it from 30,000 feet, I would think with all the trouble they were having with pass protection that more moving pockets against USC might have made more sense, but I don't know. But first you have to, he says, what are your thoughts on the offensive coordinator and identity? People ask what the identity is. The identity of this team, they want to establish the run game, inside zone, outside zone, play action bootleg, and then occasionally go deep. But if the run game is not getting established or it doesn't command honor and respect from the defense, it's hard for any offensive coordinator to get much going. Michigan State's not really the fancy RPO shotgun spread team. You can win doing it other ways, being under center more, inside zone, outside zone, some power runs. We're not seeing Michigan State run much gap power, but Michigan has shown you can win that way. Illinois currently, and there's others you can win different ways. But Michigan State, when they do go in the gun with Childs and his mobility, like I said, a little bit of RPO, just a little bit, looked pretty good. Smith has said in the past that they've kind of deviated from doing the RPO stuff because they like a good chunk of what they do, pass and run under center, and you can't do RPO from under center. Question 19, Dr. Fraser Crane from Seattle says, Jim, I've asked you this over the summer and feel it's important to revisit. Is there anything positive going on with the football program? Dr. Fraser Crane getting right at it. I'm listening. He says, I'm sure you can point to certain aspects of the program that are improved over 2024, but bottom line, there is no signature W. The Swiss cheese defense remains. Zero push from the offensive line. The path to a simple bowl eligibility level of wins looks arduous, and our head coach is not really doing much to engender enthusiasm and confidence. That's from Dr. Fraser Crane in Seattle. All right, you ask, is there anything positive going on with the program? I'd say the defense made some progress last week. Raiola, like we said in the pre-snap read, all kinds of talent, one read, but he's a one-read guy. They read short from long, short to long in Nebraska. If something's open, it's coming out now. Michigan State did a good job of taking away that first read. And Raiola, when he goes to a second read, his effectiveness would drop off substantially. I saw that on film, and it was the case in this game. And that's what led to Michigan State's sacks. At least 2 or 3 of them were coverage sacks when he was to the second read, and he had no confidence in himself. He just doesn't have it. Michigan State did a good job taking away that first read without playing press across the board. So they moved some pictures on him, got him to a second read, and the defense was repeatedly put in bad situations, short field, 2 interceptions, short field, sack, got out of it. The defense fought off the ropes really well. I know they scored 38 points, 31 were on special teams. 10 were on special teams, so they gave up 28 points. The tunnel screen got out, so they had a good day of defense going, and tunnel screen gets out for a touchdown. That was the backbreaker. Playing a good day of defense, and the deep one on 3rd and 10 when Josh Eaton got turned inside out. That was a backbreaker. So in the red zone, the run defense was not as good. At the end of the game, Michigan State, I don't want to say gave up, but they had wilted, and for that last touchdown didn't offer much resistance. Overall, defense showed progress, and like the coaches said, there was better, tighter, more consistent, more reliable, tighter coverage in pass defense in that game against an offense that's put up some big numbers. I think the numbers for Nebraska in the pass game are a little bit inflated. I think you don't have to be a good team to beat Nebraska. Michigan State, talent-wise, Nebraska did not have a talent edge on Michigan State. Nebraska won that game because they made fewer mistakes. Playing at home helped Nebraska because it hurt Michigan State with some crowd noise on some of the problems. Just here and there, just a couple here and there. Nebraska deserved to win because they made fewer mistakes. But the defense for Michigan State took a step. At USC, the defense was terrible, right? USC was a nice, balanced, explosive operation. Maeva, touch, read, arm strength, really good. I'll be really interested to see what happens with USC against Michigan this week at USC. USC's a better team at home. Michigan's better than I thought they'd be. Their defense is pretty good. USC's run defense is not great. Good with the pass rush, but Michigan can fix it to where they don't get into many pass rush situations. But it's on the road. USC will be good. It's going to be a fascinating game. I'll be interested to see how that develops. So, but the defense had a tough time at USC against a really good offense at 2 a.m. After a bye week, they rebounded pretty well. Joe Rossi, Michigan State defensive coordinator, last week said practice during the bye week was good. Practice during game week was good. And he said practice so far this week's been great. So he feels good about it. I think there is some progress there. The pass rush against Nebraska, I think, was kind of a one-game deal. I don't think Michigan State's pass rush is going to be good every week. There'll be some games when it's pretty good here and there. But for the reasons I mentioned, they got Raiola to a second read and had coverage sacks. I don't think pass rush game in and game out is going to be a difference maker. I got to watch some UCLA tonight for the pre-snap read. I've not really looked at their pass protection yet, but it's going to be hard to sack him because Nico is really mobile and dangerous. It might be a situation where you don't want to be chasing him into a play. You're going to want to corral him. So I think the defense is showing some strides. Didn't have as many negative plays at linebacker. Wayne Matthews came back and made a nice play on third down once. I was a little critical of him last week, and I'm glad he's feeling better coming off the injury. But before his injury, I thought there's some loose screws there a little bit. Safety, they're without Nakai Martinez. He's still day-to-day. When he comes back, that'll help. He was one of the best players last year. And Malik Spencer's got to be more solvent for a senior. So defense, I think, in terms of same pageness, was better. If they get on the same page, they have a chance to be decent on defense, which is what we've been looking for and expecting coming into the season. And it didn't happen through the first 4 games, but there was some progress in that one. So defense is some progress. As far as other areas of progress in the program, the current players seem to really value the culture and the camaraderie on the team. And we'll see if the camaraderie continues if they lose a few games. That camaraderie and togetherness, that can help in recruiting for like-minded players that want to be part of something. And you can say that doesn't matter. That's no big deal. That's bull crap. I don't care about culture and camaraderie. Let me tell you something. Culture and camaraderie is important. And that was one of the backbones of the D'Antonio program. Smith believes in it. His door is open. He cares about these guys more so than Tucker did. Tucker had a lot of things going for himself as a coach, but increasingly toward the end of his tenure, he had the door closed for a lot of reasons. So the seeds of culture are being planted. Whether or not that ever comes to fruition, not sure. But defense showed some progress last week. And this is college football. Each game is like a season, and each game is like a final exam. So last week's final exam, some positives. There were a lot of loose screws in other areas, but the defense showed some positives. The culture is not a small thing. So I know that needs to carry over to having a more buttoned down approach across the board, and it's not there yet. But it's better than the culture when when things are deteriorating under Bobby Williams. Bobby Williams, good guy, a lot of respect for him, but he let a lot of crap go, and the dry rot just exploded. You know what happened with Jeff Smoker and everybody else. Love Jeff Smoker. Hope he's doing well. Question 20, MSUGOB in East Lansing says, Copy, talk about potential Michigan State games that Michigan State can win potentially to secure in the win column this year in order to get to 6-6 or 7-5, but you never mentioned Michigan as being one of those games. Do you feel this game is unattainable at this point? Good question there from MSUGOB in East Lansing. Prior to the season, I thought Michigan was a winnable game for Michigan State. Lately, not as much. Now, it's still a rivalry game, and anything can happen, all those things. And Michigan better show up and be buttoned up and be ready to play. They can't go like Penn State out to UCLA and have problems. I suspect Michigan will be ready to play for this game. Does Michigan State really know the rivalry like they should with 80 new players in the last 2 years and the new coaching staff? Maybe not. We'll get more clues on that this season. But Michigan State has not come as far on the offensive line or on defense as I thought they would or needed to. And Michigan, meanwhile, is better than I thought they would be. Defense was good last year, and it's good this year. They hit pretty hard. They're good. Offensive line, they have some struggles at right tackle here and there. Wide receivers aren't great, but overall, Michigan, last year they were 7-5, and we're almost worse than that. Finished better. Freshman quarterback coming in. He does some dynamic things here and there, but overall, I thought Michigan would be worse than they are right now. So they're a little better than I thought. Michigan State's a little worse than I thought, and the way the trajectory of those two right now is not positive. It's at Michigan State. That helps. Things could change by the time that game is played, but as of right now, when I'm looking for Michigan State to get to 6 wins, you beat UCLA, beat Maryland, and maybe win at Minnesota is more likely than beating Michigan. Iowa, with Childs and the things he can do, and Iowa's so low scoring, you might be able to score 17 points and steal a game there. Theoretically, if your defense hangs together, not that Iowa's great on offense, but you can kind of hang in a game and steal one against them. Iowa's good, solid, respectable team, almost beat Indiana. And Iowa's going to be a little more jacked for that game because they felt like they let one get away when they lost to Michigan State last year. That makes that one tougher. Question 21, Heather from Dallas says, do you get the sense that there is any internal accountability for the state of the team and the play presently? Is there any internal accountability, she asks. That's from Heather from Dallas. Internal accountability from the administrative level? No, that's not the place of the administration right now. You're not going to be getting a knock on the door from administrators, demanding accountability right now in the middle of the season. Internal accountability in terms of coaching internally, Smith delegates the defense to Rossi. He delegates the offensive line pretty much to Mahalchik. But you could tell, I agree with the sentiment of your question. The head coach has to get results from the defense and the offensive line, and if he doesn't, he will eventually go down with the ship long term. And he knows that. They know that. So does the head coach turn up the wick on those guys? I think Smith's the increased urgency that he showed in the post-game press conference at Nebraska there was a reason for that. Probably for the constituents, which includes the fans and maybe some administrators, but also as a signal to the players and to his coaches. I think it's all of that. And he was a little more, and then on Monday he said we got out-coached and outplayed the fourth quarter. So he's turning it back on the coaches. And behind the scenes, I would hope that he's turning up the wick there. They need more. They need more accountability. They need tighter screws. They need less leakage and slippage. So I think you've seen Smith change a little bit. I think that's indicative of what you would call accountability. And eventually it rests on his shoulders. And I don't think he's just like, whistling through the park and letting things happen. I think they're trying to get things done. We'll see what it looks like on Saturday. Question 22, Joe Ski Sparty from West Bloomfield says, what is going on with the offensive coordinator? I don't see a plan that fits the circumstances. Offense behind the sticks too often with clear weaknesses in pass protection. Joe Ski Sparty in West Bloomfield is right. He says, and I'd say, each time Michigan State tries to run the ball, they're expecting better results. Every time they pass the ball, they're expecting better pass protection, and they're not getting those consistently. And an offensive coordinator and offense can't do much if the offensive line is not providing solvent play. But also the wide receivers have to block better too. Everybody does. But really, the offensive line is behind schedule. I think they would agree with that. They've had 2 big injuries there. But, and they had injuries last year. Vincic would have helped. Ramil was still struggling earlier in the year anyway, which I was a little surprised by. If you had had a healthy Ramil making the strides we expected, and Vincic, who I said coming in, I thought he was better than Phillips or Brocious. I thought he was better at Oregon State last year than Phillips or Brocious were last year for Michigan State before they were injured. So on one hand, there are injuries. So I need to remind myself of that. I'm usually cognizant of the injury situation, but the fans have been hearing about injuries for too long and too many years. And there was a thought that there'd be a little bit better depth there. And the players that are failing here and there, it's different players at different times. Lepo, Moore, Gulbin with the one that we mentioned, and collectively targeting who they go after, getting into the right play, all those things. Even with the players they have, it should be better than it is. I think they would agree with that. And it needs to be better even with those injuries. Now, Mike in Chicago says, this is question 23, he says, with the number of busts in the secondary, isn't it time to bench a few of the 5 senior starters? Josh Eaton, Malik Spencer, Bell, Martinez, Willie, for younger players. Well, Martinez has been hurt all year. Willie was hurt last week. Bell, Eaton, Malcolm Bell. Malcolm Bell's been pretty good. I know that's hard to see because the defense had struggled earlier in the year, but you didn't see Malcolm Bell having any mistakes. And Rossi mentioned that Bell for the first time played in the slot area a little bit more in this game and did pretty well. Michigan State held Nebraska to 260 yards. So that was pretty good. So let the young kids learn if we're going to have continual breakdowns, he asked, on defense. I think defense took some steps. Now, last week there were the 2 major busts. I talked about the stuttering go out and up. That was not miscommunication. That was a man-to-man breakdown. That was one player. Is it structural? Is it personnel? Is it physical? It was a physical one. Technique, maybe could have played it differently. I'm not sure. I'm sure that when they look at him, slow it down, I'm sure his angle and knee bend and eyes could have been a little bit better and balance and all those things, but he had time to get beat. Quarterback had time to run a one-time play out of one formation that they only ran once in the game and hadn't shown on film early in the year. They put it in at the right time, 3rd and 10, and changed the game. Tunnel screen, like I said, McCray lost leverage. Now the problem Spencer lost leverage. That was a 49-yard touchdown. That was after Michigan State punted. That was when Michigan State's offense could not answer, as Smith said. Michigan State's offense went dormant there in the late third quarter. Went up 21-14, then they went 3 and out a couple of times. Nebraska made their comeback. Needed the offense to answer. Instead, they give the defense a 49-yard field, and they make a mistake. So what happened on offense that led to the 49-yard short field? On this 3 and out, taking a closer look, 1st and 10, gain of 2. On that one, the wide receivers, McCray and Marsh, both missed blocks to the play side. So it's a 2-yard gain. 2nd and 8, swing pass, lose 5 yards. Now it's 3rd and 13. So run play failure, blocking. Lose 5 yards on a swing pass. I asked Jonathan Smith about that swing pass. And what he said when you go back and look at it, makes sense. He said we threw it as like a hot protection almost, meaning like it's a blitz, get rid of it. But Nebraska did a good job on this play, zone pressure. They're showing 4 rushers. They bring a linebacker and drop one. Not a zone blitz. It's a zone blitz if 5 come and you play zone behind it. It's a zone pressure if only 4 rushers and you play zone behind it. So 3 rush, linebacker joins, and defensive end drops, zone pressure. It looks like a blitz, which sped up Childs. He thinks blitz, hot route. So he says he threw it like it was hot. It wasn't hot. They faked Michigan State into thinking it was a blitz situation. That's number 1. Smith said, we threw it like it was a hot protection, but we actually picked that up. But with the crowd noise, we are not on the same page. O-line picks it up. Aiden thinks it has to come out a little sooner, unquote. He says, we throw it almost like throwing a screen, unquote. So crowd noise, communication, zone blitz, throws it quicker than it needed to be. Which could be okay if you're in man-to-man and people are running off. But instead, it's a zone blitz. They're in cover 2, so the corner is squatting, Cloud over there. So he's not reacting to it, any downfield routes or anything else. Running back comes out, that corner plays, it's loss of 5. So all those things. Sometimes it's rock, paper, scissors, and you just get beat. Michigan State lost the rock, paper, scissors there. Could they have gotten out of it a little bit if they had a little more poise at quarterback? Hey, quarterback's getting beat the daylights out of him. He's not trusting the protection. There's crowd noise. It's windy. Tough situation. 2nd and 8. They lose 5. Tough one. 3rd and 13. Scrambling around. McCray comes open on scramble rules. Into the wind. Bounces it. He's open. hard pass to make, expecting the quarterback to do everything. All those things add up. Now you're punting from your own, 10-yard line. They get it 1st and 10 to the 49. Short field position, you make another error. You're not good enough to win the game. Question 24. But your main point is it time to bench a few of the 5 senior starters on defense? I say no. I think the defense is showing glimmers of hope. Question 24, Ethan Taylor. Oh, it's a question about basketball. This is the last one. Basketball recruiting about Ethan Taylor. He says, any feedback trickling out on Ethan Taylor's Midnight Madness visit? Was he impressed? Jason Taylor, this was posted before Jason Killip's great article about Ethan Taylor. 7-footer, plays for Link Academy in Missouri, number 2 center in the country, 7 feet, quick, with a drop step to either shoulder, wiry, strong. He's thin, but not a string bean. He jumps well. He's going to be able to add some decent musculature to him, but he's a long 7-footer, but he's got good feet. Excellent center. I think he's going to be an impact college basketball player early in his career. Loved the visit, and we're hearing good things about Michigan State's chances with him. Indiana's in there also. Let me see here. But there's a lot of smoke that Michigan State's in real good position and something could happen soon. Number 25 player in the country. He also visited Oregon and Oklahoma and Kansas. He was supposed to visit Kentucky this weekend, was it? I think he might have canceled that one. Yeah, things looking really good for Ethan Taylor, and he's a big timer. 7 foot, 230. This would be a big one for Michigan State to get. So yeah, things are looking good there. We're going to wrap it up. That's it for Spartan Mag Live. Sorry it's late in the week. Again, sorry it's not live. We'll get back to that soon. In the future. We appreciate everybody joining us. Go to SpartanMag.com. Give us a like here on the channel. Go to SpartanMag.com. $1 will get you a subscription over there. You can join all the fun on the Underground Bunker message board and join this cast of characters and the things we talk about every day, all day about Michigan State football. Check us out over there. We appreciate all the support. And we'll have a live stream again soon. We'll change the rules on that a little bit. You guys will probably like that, and we appreciate the support. So anyway, take care of each other. Be good. Have a good, happy homecoming weekend. We'll see what happens this weekend. Basketball coverage continuing at SpartanMag.com. We'll see you later. Everybody take care of each other.